Hello and welcome to the Sun Dragon. I'm Rebecca. I'm the owner of Sun Dragon Art and Fiber in downtown Brevard, North Carolina, and I film this series at my house. And this is the third in our Brioche Knit-a-Long series. We are doing these can work for brioche in general as well, but these are specific to Lavanya Patricella's Brioche Bandana Cowl that she's written. She has 3 different versions of the pattern in 3 different weights. So whichever one you want to try out, my sample is in bulky. The one I was knitting last month that I'm almost done with, just got to do the bottom part, is in fingering weight. There's also one in between in DK. So the first 2 videos I made, one was on doing the setup to start getting our wraps in the right place. And the second video was on brioche purling. So we're going to do one more video on brioche knitting. What I remember in brioche, each color does 1 round or row, and once both colors have done that round or row, then you're considered to have been done with that round. I like learning it in the round first because then you start to get a hang of, like, each color has 1 task. So my rust color is purling and my green color is knitting, brioche purl and brioche knit. But I can mark my pattern and say, okay, if my green is ever purling, I did something wrong for the round part. If my rust is ever knitting, I've gotten off somehow. I'm doing something wrong. And remember, in some ways, brioche is very much like ribbing, and that the stitches that are hanging on your needle are alternating between purl and knit. And so whatever row you're doing, so this is, about to do a brioche knit row, it means I'm going to be slipping purl stitches and wrapping them. And brioche knitting, which is knitting the knit stitch and the wrap from the previous half of the round together. Now, again, to say that verbally doesn't necessarily have it make sense yet for a lot of people. So let's get to it. All right, I have both of my yarns hanging down here. And remember, we left it with a slip and a wrap last row with the rust. So now I'm doing the first half of round 3, which says slip 1 yarn over BRK. Now remember, the knit row is where, for my brain, the language needs to be changed. Because slip 1 yarn over, it's going to look like these guys. Slip with the yarn over. But you need to remember to have your yarn in front before you slip a stitch. And that could be in front and wrapping it over, depending on how you hold tension. But that's one of the reasons I recommended leaving all your yarns in front. This one, at least until you get used to what's happening, it's in front. It's in the right place for your very first slip one. And take a look at what I just did. I just picked up this yarn, and my slip stitch is the same color, which means I picked up the wrong color. These are why these tips are to help keep you on track, to say when you're slipping a stitch and that first stitch that's getting slipped is a rust color, it should always be the opposite of your working yarn. And if I'd made notes in my pattern, I would have said, okay, my color B is this green. But my slip stitch should always be the opposite color of what I am working with on this row. So if I slipped this and started to wrap it with my rust, I should say, wait, something's wrong here. That's what I just did. So slip, yarn over, and the brioche knit, this is the only difference from our setup row, is now the knit stitch has a wrap. So I'm knitting a knit stitch. What's sitting on the needle, what's underneath it doesn't look like it yet because we haven't done enough work yet. When I say doesn't look like it, it's not a green stitch hanging down here, but it will look like that as we keep going. So I slip, yarn over, or just know by doing your next stitch it's going to pull that yarn over. Brioche knit is to knit a stitch and its wrap together. Yarn to the front, slip, Brioche Knit. BRK is the abbreviation. If you want less than a mouthful, I call it a bark. A bark is a brioche knit. A burp is a brioche purl. So remember that SL1YO. Bring your yarn to the front before you slip. And then you can bring your yarn over that. And you can brioche knit the stitch and its wrap together. Yarn forward, slip, bark. Yarn forward, slip, and bark. The same things from the other row we just did, even though we're knitting this row instead of purling, same things. Yarn always has to be in front before you slip. For a knit stitch, that means moving it. The purl stitch, it was already there. Knit stitch, we move it to the front before we slip anything. We slip things purl-wise. And then if you want to, bring your yarn over it, let it feel like you've done what you need to. Your brioche knit is going to be a stitch of the same color yarn that you're working with and a wrap of the other color. Yarn to the front, slip the alternating single stitch, alternating color single stitch, brioche knit a stitch and its alternating color together. Yarn to the front, slip the stitch of the other color, brioche knit the stitch and its wrap of the other color together. Yarn front, slip, bark. When I want a mantra that is not super wordy, that's what I do. Yarn forward, slip, bark. Yarn forward. Work that out if you need to. Slip and bark. What I find sometimes when I pull my yarn forward, what's happening right here is it almost looks like there's a stitch and a wrap of the same color. It's like, which one is the one I'm supposed to slip? If you tug these apart, I find this only happens for me on the knit row. They kind of tuck under each other when I'm moving them up in the circle here. So if it looks like there's an error, like there's a stitch and its wrap at the same color, but you need to be slipping a single stitch anyway, pull them apart so you don't accidentally slip this one over and try to knit this one with that. That will lead to errors. So my yarn is in front. I've tucked these, I've pulled on these to get them untucked so I can slip the single stitch of the other color and I can knit together the green stitch and its rust colored wrap. So again, tug these away, yarn to the front, slip the single rust, knit the green and the rust wrap together. Yarn to the front, clean these up, slip, bark. Yarn to the front, or yarn over, but think of a yarn over as it has to come to the front and over your needle. Slip, bark. Yarn to the front, slip, which should be the other color, bark, two colors together. Yarn to the front, slip a single stitch of the other color, brioche knit, the stitch and the wrap, two different colors together. Yarn to the front, slip, bark. Yarn to the front, slip, bark. Yarn to the front. Untangle them so you slip the single stitch by itself, the purl stitch, because we're knitting this row, right? And brioche knit. Yarn to the front, slip the single purl stitch of the other color, brioche knit, the stitch and its wrap together. Again, yarn to the front, purl stitch, if I need to dig in there to see it, purl stitch of the other color that I slip, knit stitch, that's the green, wrap of the rust, brioche knit them together. Yarn to the front, tug them apart if they get tangled, slip, brioche knit. Almost to my marker there. Yarn to the front, slip, brioche knit. Yarn to the front, slip, brioche knit. Yarn to the front, slip. Now let's say, here's an accident that could happen. And actually, I think it usually happens in this direction. Yarn to the front, slip, and then you leave it in front here, and you go to brioche knit, and you only have one thing here. You don't have a wrap. There it is. If we look, we want the wraps to slant this way. So we could pick up the wrap and put it on the needle. It's going to be going in the wrong direction. It's leaning right when I want it leading left. So I would take it off, put my single stitch on the other needle, get my wrap up over it. I have videos on this, on fixing this. So I would say if that happens, look up fixing brioche mistakes. I will make sure I put that in the description of this and in the playlist. So yarn to the front, slip the other color, brioche knit, the stitch and it's wrapped together. I find on the whole, it's easier to move my yarn to the front and leave it there. For some continental knitters, it makes sense to leave it in the back because your first motion is going to be to the front and over. I'm going to do these last few stitches on this row again with the continental knitting, which is to the front and over, slip, brioche knit, front and over, because it just gets it set up easier, slip, brioche knit. But that's the end of the row there. For continental knitters, the next time you come to it, if I move the stitch, it might make sense to leave this in the back so you can get that motion going. Continental knitters, I'd leave your yarn in the back. English style knitters who are holding the yarn in their right hand, I'd leave it in front. So it's just, you don't have to worry about missing the wrap the first time you come to it. So that was color B, the first half of round 3. The second half of round 3 is to pick up color A, which is the color that was your edging. So I'm going to pick that up and get ready. And it's a brioche purl row. And it says to burp brioche purl, which is a stitch in its wrap. They are almost conjoined there anyway. This is the one I find it's easier to follow the instructions because slip, yarn over, brioche purl, slip, yarn over, brioche purl, slip the single, and yarn over. I'm going to do one more brioche purl here. I'm going to pause just to show you we've got these knit stitches in the green are starting to become more prominent. I have to save some of this for my class this weekend, but the knit stitches are becoming more prominent and the purl chasms here are starting to build. So we're going to end up with knit stitches running down this side in green. And if we look at the back, we're going to start to see knit stitches on the back side in the rust. Just let that happen. Don't let that confuse you too much. When you're going forward in knitting, your rust is your purl color. For me, the rust is the A color is the purl color. Slip, wrap, purl. So my slip, wrap, purl. My rust color will always be purling, and my green color will always be knitting on every single row. Because guess what? Once you get the hang of round 3, which we just did all of the first part and just a little bit of the second, because we've done brioche knitting in the last video, you're going to repeat round 3 the specified number of times. And that will give you really good practice. This should end up looking, remember my fingering weight one, my color B is my white. I have really clear, crisp lines of V's with the white, and if I pull that apart, the pearl valleys are all in my multicolor. And the inside looks like the reverse. Clean, clear rows of V's on either side with different colors. And if that ever doesn't look right, something went hinky wonky, and my Fixing Brioche Mistakes video may help. Thanks for joining us in this 3-part series so far on Lavanya Patricella's Brioche Bandana Cowl. Remember, get the pattern from her. Use these as assistants to the pattern, and she has 3 different versions of the pattern. We have some kits on our website for just yarn choices, and then we can help you get the pattern from Ravelry, or you can get the pattern from her yourself, but please get the pattern. This knit-along is not meant to be done without her pattern. These videos are meant to be assistants to the patterns to help you piece out what's going on with brioche. Remember also that I have done an earlier series when maybe my videography was a little more sketch, but I have done an earlier video series that has been quite popular on brioche with whiteboard pictures to help you map out and color code and understand what's going on. And I have a whole series of videos on fixing mistakes in brioche. I will put them all in the brioche playlist that I am building for this knit-along. And where I can, I will also put them in the description so you can click on links to get you to other videos. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider subscribing to this channel if you haven't already. Let's keep our numbers growing. If you'd like to donate to the channel, you can become a member or give us a super thanks. Or you can go over to patreon.com/sundragon, and for a monthly fee there, a monthly donation, whatever you pick, you get different swag like stickers and cups and mugs and other things based on your level after 3 months. So thank you for being a part of this community on whatever level you can participate. Even if that is giving us a thumbs up for this video, writing a comment of appreciation, asking a question. As I always like to say, may your crafting be filled with joy and confidence. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.